Hi, I'm Brian Lord, Senior Vice President of Premier Speakers Bureau. I'm happy to have on Dr. John Izzo today. John is a top speaker on leadership change and branding and author of the new book, Stepping Up. John, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Brian. It's great to be here.
Great. Now, your new book is called Stepping Up. What is the core message of Stepping Up?
Well, the core message of Stepping Up is that when each one of us stops looking to someone else to take responsibility for change, whatever that, nature of that change is, everything gets better. So, for example, when I'm responsible for my own career and happiness at work, when I take responsibility for the morale of my workplace and the brand of my organization, no matter what level I'm at, when I take initiative and step up and say, look, give me the ball, everything changes. And finally, Brian, it's really a book about how does a leader and a company create a culture of ownership. Every week, leaders are saying to me, I wish my people would step up, take initiative, and stop acting like victims. So it's really about why do some companies create that culture of ownership, and what do leaders do that makes that happen?
Why do you think this message is so important for this time?
Well, I think we live in an increasing time where two things are true. One is where, there's so much finger pointing. It's true everywhere from politics to an organization. This would be a great company if the union would do this, if the managers would do that, if the frontline people would get with the program, if the senior people would get with the program, if the president would do this, if the Congress would do this, if my wife would do this. So I think we're in an age where we're always pointing out instead of saying, what can I do? And, one of the most empowering questions for anyone in an organization is, or even in a relationship, what can I do to make this better? The second thing is, I think there's a really growing feeling in organizations and in society that we can't change things. For the book, we surveyed people, why don't you step up to create change in your company or in your community? And the number one reason was people said, because I'm only one person, it won't matter if I change things. And so it's really a book also to counter this growing feeling of impotence that people have, that they can't fix things, by featuring stories of people inside of companies and in communities who stepped up, saw a need, and decided they were the one who could do something about it. So in that way, it's both to counter that feeling of powerlessness, but also to show what happens in a company and in the world when people decide to step up and say, let me make the change.
Mm-hmm. What are the tools that audiences, the tools or action items that audiences are able to take away from this speech?
Well, for formal leaders, they take away some very practical techniques to do three basic things. Number one, to give people a seat at the table in change. One of my beliefs is that one reason people don't step up in organizations is that they don't feel they have a seat at the table. In fact, in our surveys, we found that the number one and number two reasons why people said they didn't step up within an organization was because leaders made decisions without consulting them or dismissed their ideas without consideration. So I really teach leaders, how do you really create a seat at the table? The second thing is, how do you really manage people so they will act more responsibly? And I think one of the challenges, Brian, is that we're always saying we want people to be accountable, but actually we don't want people to be accountable. We want them to be responsible. We don't want to be watching over them all day long. So how do you really help give people responsibility and therefore challenge them to act responsibly? And then the third thing is I really give people, whatever level they are in the organization, a series of tools for, if you will, stepping up their game. How do I step up and set really targets and goals for myself in terms of stepping up my personal game? How do I become more self-aware and get feedback from others and use that as a tool for stepping up? And how do I take that feedback effectively? And how do I challenge the status quo without getting in trouble? One of the mythologies I talk about in the book is that, yes, people get ahead. And what our research shows is that the opposite is true. People who debate and are what I call constructive irritants get ahead. The problem is most of us aren't perceived as constructive irritants. We're perceived as complainers. So I talk about how do you really become a constructive irritant and therefore enhance your career. So those are the kind of tools, among others, that I give people in these talks.
One of the things we're really big on here at Premier is making the event planner look good. We want to make them look good. We want to make their lives easier, less stressful. What are some of the ways that you do that?
Well, I've done a lot of work over the years in associations and corporations, but really a lot of my work has been with companies and with large corporations. And the thing that people always say after my talk, well, I did one, for example, for you guys with Walmart, and it was my first event I'd ever done with Walmart, and the meeting planner said, that I could easily have been mistaken for a 20-year team member. And I think the first thing is, I try to work really hard to figure out what is happening in the company and what is this meeting about? What is the client trying to accomplish? Because, I will never know as much about their business as they do. And I say that right up front in my talks. I'm not an expert in your business. I think one of the mistakes many speakers make is pretending they know the business as well or better than the person listening, and they don't. What I try to do is understand what are the unique challenges, what are the unique things that are going on. I listen to the messages, I absorb a lot. Even right in the moment, I'll come early and hear the CEO, hear the senior executives, and even with 10 minutes notice, integrate some of those messages into the thing. The other thing is I think you have to be just easy to deal with. The client has so much on their mind. The last thing they need is me to be a prima donna or difficult or make their job tougher. So I try and make their job as easy as possible, take as much on myself, no pun, responsibility, and then, just make their life as easy as possible and try to be the same off stage as I am on stage. That's the greatest compliment I often get from clients. They say, you know what? You were a pleasure to deal with because the guy on stage was the guy we had off stage. But the number one thing is know what the client's trying to accomplish and integrate my message with their message. And I don't even call it customization. To me, it's much deeper than that. It's really trying to figure out what their goals are so that at the end of the day, people leave and are more likely to do what you're hoping they will do.
Well, John, thanks for coming on and doing this interview, and look forward to helping you and clients step up.
Thanks so much. And Brian, I challenge anybody listening, step up in your own life. Step up to make your company better. Step up to make the world a little better place. And the bottom line is when people step up and take responsibility, everything changes. So thank you, and thanks for your great work at Premier.
Thanks, John.